Hello, everyone. I am Laura Sheehan, U.S. lawyer turned career coach and strategist. And having lived in 8 countries over the span of nearly 20 years, I am regularly in search of my community, a place where I can both give and receive support to people in career and life transition. Empowering Perspectives is exactly that group. Founded in 2017 in Hanoi, Vietnam, by 3 women, myself included, who wanted to help others come together and share resources, the EP community quickly expanded throughout Asia. And with COVID, is now online and reaching a community worldwide. Every month, we gather on the third Tuesday to talk to a guest who can provide us with a glimpse into his or her life, the challenges he has overcome, and the wisdom he can now share. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Paul Lewis, whom I actually met in Hanoi back in, was it 2016? Maybe 2017. Paul is a motivational speaker, thought leader, author, master of the martial arts, tea connoisseur, and as a performance coach and mentor, is the president and founder of Immortal Executive LLC. In this role, he offers one unique mission: to create healthy, resilient leaders, powerful performers who live to their potential and sustain their unstoppable best. Paul's personal goal is to live to 120 years strong. Paul has lived and worked all over the world, both as a professional in his own right and as an accompanying partner. All of these incredible factors make him a perfect pick for our speaker this month. Paul, welcome.
Konnichiwa, Laura-san.
Yes, that's right. Because here I am in Tokyo. So konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. And I am in Atlanta, Georgia, after moving many places throughout the world. But it's wonderful to see you again. And I'm really looking forward to our interaction and to the interaction with your community.
Thank you again so much for agreeing to be with us today. We've just got a couple of quick questions to introduce you to our wonderful community and to kind of tease out what we're going to be talking about later this month. I want to start actually by talking about your career path, because you have lived in so many places and have pursued a variety of professional endeavors. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that has shaped what you are working on right now?
Wow. Well, that's a great question, and thanks for opening with that, because it takes me back to my youth, where probably at the age of 8, while living in Sydney, Australia, I became really passionate about the martial arts. It was a huge adventure for me that influenced so much in my life, hence my passion with Asia. So it was an opportune starting point to really assess the physicality and the philosophy of their martial arts, which gained a lot of momentum throughout my life because I've always been involved in the martial arts. Later on, I ventured into food technology in Sydney, Australia, which was an extraordinary passion of mine, because food is a huge resource for what I do now, nutrition and performance optimization. It's a foundation of what we choose and how we choose to live our life. And from then on, at the age of 24, I hopped on a plane and jumped from Sydney all the way to Israel, where I had the opportunity via the United States to meet with a doctor of Chinese medicine and Taoist propagator. His name is Jimun Lam, or Ronnie. And we forged this incredible bond, friendship, mentor-student role. And he mentored me in manipulative therapies, manipulation, mobilization. And I ended up going back to America back to Israel after spending 2 years with him on 2 separate occasions, where I opened up a pain and injury clinic to deal with physical and somatic injuries, which was pretty rampant at the time, considering what was going on during that era in Israel. And then hopped on another plane to the States, realistically for 2.5 weeks, but it ended up being for most of my life at the moment, where I ended up as an athletic wellness director at a private health club, interacting with executives, again, as I had done in Israel, CEOs, business people, business owners, and really made the association between high stress lives, professions, and how it impacts the way they function inside and outside the workplace. And that became a huge priority of mine, to understand the psyche of people who go through such compelling lives, but don't know how to find that balance between growth and renewal. Hopped on another plane with my wife and kids to Hanoi, Vietnam, as you discussed before, Laura, and had an exceptional opportunity to interact with Asian culture, because for me, it's such a huge part of who I am. And I was fortunate enough to go from 100 miles an hour as an eligible family member, because my wife, who works for the Center of Disease Control, had a position in Hanoi. And I ended up giving up my profession once again to follow a different path. And that's where I found the need to develop something that I could own and help others to influence their lives. And that became the process to the Immortal Executive, where I worked with officers and eligible family members in the American Embassy, helping with presentations to discuss the interactions between officers and their spouses, and how they manage their relationships, but find their individuality within that role. And I use that as a foundation for a powerful coaching and mentoring program, which became the Immortal Executive. So now back in the US, I brought the program back with me from Hanoi and decades of experience with so many executive CEOs, business people, and professionals. And I use that on a daily basis, working with a relatively broad demographic.
Paul, as you were talking, I wrote down a couple of words that really resonated with me, and I know are repeating themes throughout everything that you do: movement, momentum, choices. And then it was interesting because as you were talking about the transitions that you've made in life and in locations, I remembered a story that you told me, because when you were last living in Atlanta, you had been there for a while and you had built up a really incredibly successful practice coaching executives and high level performers. And you had a moment where your wife came home and said, "We have this opportunity to go to Hanoi." And you were really debating whether or not to do that. Would you mind sharing that story that helped you make that decision?
Absolutely. Wow. This actually has to do with a tree. And we went for a walk up in a location called the Kennesaw Mountains. So it was an early morning hike, and the both of us were so busy. We had decided before we were married that we wanted to travel the world together, to experience and spend time in an exciting location, something that was culturally different. I was always drawn towards Asia. And she was always drawn towards Latin America. So for the first time, I actually won out. So here it is. We came down from the mountain, and I was walking across the road with my son, who was probably about 4 years old at the time. And he was really tired. He wanted me to pick me up. He was crying, upset. He was hungry. And so we ended up waiting for about 30 seconds while he composed himself and I picked him up. I was about to cross the road to go to the car because we were in a parking area outside the main parking area because it was such a beautiful, sunny, quiet day, no wind. All of a sudden, as we're about to cross this road, which was actually an old highway, a 2-lane highway, I put my foot down on the bitumen of the road, and I was about to walk across, and all of a sudden I heard this massive crack, and a tree fell right down in front of me. And the trunk, out of the choice of hundreds of cars, fell right onto our car and flattened it. And I had to compose myself in the situation. And I ended up calling the ambulance, calling the police department. Everyone came. I have to look after my son, connect with my wife because she was back at the mountain base, and I didn't realize the potential of that situation. I mean, it was a real calamity. Had he not have pulled me back for that 30 seconds, I wouldn't be here right now, and neither would he. And about 6 months after that, and that realization that hit me a few days later, when I didn't want to leave my son's sight for about a month, I ended up traveling with the family to Colorado. And on a lake in the Colorado, I remember a beautiful day. I was with my wife, and we looked at each other and we said to each other, life's too short. And we ended up saying, let's go. And I decided to resign my position, and she decided to pursue a position where we could move as a family as part of the embassy and the Center of Disease Control to Vietnam. She was accepted, and we ended up moving. Incredibly fortuitous, making a very, very difficult, intense situation into possibility.
And then once you got to Vietnam, like you just described a minute ago, you were able to slow down from going 100 miles an hour or 200 kilometers an hour to a pace that was much more slow and purposeful and meaningful, which gave you the space then to, and it sounds like, return to your Taoist propagator phase, right? That you described when you were in Israel. And that leads me into my next question, because one of the most striking things that you have mentioned and has become a part of your personal and professional mantras, I think, is this incredible quote from Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but I'll read it out slowly so that everybody can let it sink in. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Tell us a little bit about how you have brought those principles into your life and work.
That's a deep, profound question, and I could actually spend hours talking about it, but we don't have that at the moment. We've discussed it together on occasion. But the reality is that as far as I see everything is cyclic. And one of the greatest things that I aspire to in my life, and the Tao preaches this whole idea of emptiness, of being able to effectively let go and experience life for what it is, rather than being overconsumed with information. Because for me, it's all about being incredibly grounded. And this is why the role of fitting with left brain people is something that I aspire to, but I also work extensively with right brain people. But this whole idea of emptiness within emptiness is to be able to function in an arena where you're not overwhelmed with everything around you, where you're centered, balanced, still, and aware of everything that happens around you. So learning to adapt that as part of a philosophy, as part of a way of life, irrespective of what you confront, to be grounded, to listen, to be attentive, to be fluid, to be elastic, to be aware. And I'm going to use an interesting analogy, which is a Japanese analogy. Yes. Kyudo is a Japanese form of archery. And what it does, it teaches grounding. It teaches awareness. It teaches the ability to let go and center. Because just like just like the arrow as part of the bow, as part of an extension of your body, just like the katana was for the samurai, that ability to be able to center yourself, focusing on internal self and stability, is a huge variable that can be altered if you effectively ground yourself, center yourself, and remain fluid. And it's this whole concept of emptiness, because we experience so much push, push, drive, 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 drive. We don't experience the ability to open up and see what we have in front of us in 360 degrees around us. And that familiarity becomes part of us when we begin to modify the way we think, the way we process, the way we filter, the way we execute, and the way we perform.
And those concepts of presence and stillness are, I know, concepts that you teach everyone that you have the opportunity to be in front of, myself included. And I very vividly remember the first time that you called me out on it. Because I think we were on it may have even been a video call or a telephone call. And I was talking, but at the same time typing on doing something else. And you said, Laura, I can hear you. I can tell you're not paying full attention. And it was so true. And the thing is that we, in this day and age, go at 100 miles an hour without even thinking about it, feel guilty, honestly, about slowing down. And what's been very interesting about this COVID time is that some people have called it the great pause, because it's forced people to take a step back, change their perspective, and look around and see how things might change. And for some, it's been a huge relief to be able to have a built-in excuse that isn't theirs, but is something bigger. They say, oh, I can't do anything, it's COVID. And for others, it's been a cause of additional stress because they don't really know how to slow down and how to take that moment to breathe and to be present just in this moment. Not even just, sorry. I learned last month that we shouldn't use the word just. To be present in this moment and to, whether that's to the people that are in front of you or the project that you're working on or the stillness of your environment and being with yourself, which is very difficult for people. How, or I should say, what are the ways that we can develop the skills of presence and stillness?
A big part of stillness is being able to let go. And as we discussed, we're dealing with difficult times. We're dealing with COVID. Over here in America, there's an election going on, and it's having a huge impact on the psyche of everybody. I experienced at a period of time when I lived in Israel during a major uprising there, a battle of cultures. I experienced it also in Atlanta when I observed the frustration, the animosity, the anger, the upset, the uncertainty during the 2008 global recession. Everything ebbs and flows. The problem is we expect normalcy. And the reality is it's learning to be able to be adaptive and fluid. But the whole idea, we can't change everything around us unless we're prepared to alter the way we function, the way we perform, the way we think, the way we filter out information, the way we preserve our sanity and our ability to focus, listen attentively, think powerfully, perform powerfully. So one of the big models that I choose to work with and have chosen to work with and develop as part of the Immortal Executive is learn first to deal with the internal, efficient communication. Understanding that we need to first assess and define what it is that we're looking for, greater purpose, what it is that we want to achieve, irrespective of what's happening around us. Make powerful declarations, implement those declarations, and address, qualify, and define progress. So the first part of being able to establish that is how you effectively communicate with yourself. Because unless you're doing so, you're caught up with all these external variables, and it just compounds your life, and it gets heavier and heavier, and it stalls you. And there can't be any fluidity because you're immersed, you're in a quagmire. So to be able to communicate effectively with the outside world, retain balance and semblance, and to work with your external environment, first it comes down to centering and stilling yourself. It doesn't mean that you go and sit on a mountain. On the contrary, a great mentor of mine once said to me, you don't go and sit on a mountain. We don't live in those times. Back in China, where meditation, or India, where meditation was a form of enlightenment, where people will go and sit for a year, it's not realistic, or 10 years, it's not realistic. What we do is we internalize that, and we learn to find that balance of growth and renewal, always finding that balance, making sure that you interpret everything as a way of elevation and at the same time nurturing. Because our goal is quality of life, potentially length of life. And I'm the crazy one that always says that I want to live to 120 years young. It's true, I do. But I have to be the one to instill that on a daily basis. And that means taking control of my actions by mastering myself. Because, as we refer to Lao Tzu, mastering yourself is true power. If not, then you're trying to conquer things that you can't necessarily control.
And I love too, Paul, that as you're talking about all these great concepts, you're talking about stillness, but then your hands are moving in this ball shape almost every time you're talking about something, and almost in the yin yang, I guess, the way that you're describing things. So for those of you who are just listening instead of watching, Paul's hands are constantly in motion while he's talking about the concepts of stillness. And there is actually a relationship between stillness and motion. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's one of the first things that I help motivate people to understand, is that everything's cyclic, and to gain momentum on a very weak foundation causes collapse. The whole idea is to build a solid foundation, and a solid foundation, as I shared with you before, it's about understanding how to internally and efficiently communicate with yourself. That focuses around self. So the ability to create this cyclic momentum that keeps moving in a trajectory of forward and up is incredibly powerful. But the reality is that if you are constantly moving without being able to step back and step in, then you are building what's called empty yang, or yang, Y-A-N-G. And eventually your gas is going to give out. You're not going to be an efficient performer because you're exhausted. There are so many variables that impact the way we think, function, and perform and execute, that we end up leading to diminishing returns. And where we're peaking, we end up sliding. The whole idea is to come from a place of stillness, where you're well grounded, where your thoughts are elastic as your body, where you move consistently in a way that you have your feet solidly connecting with the ground, and you create the foundation to instill greater insight, not only in yourself, but within other people also. So that's internal communication and dialogue that impacts how we interact with others on the outside.
So I'm smiling because when I think, and I think this is true for many people, of stillness and presence, the first thing that comes to mind is meditation. which is really difficult for myself and for many people, I think. And one of the things that you have done for yourself and for your clients is to offer an alternative to meditation through tea. And I love how your sharing a cup of tea with someone helps them to slow down and also begins a dialogue. Would you mind offering some insights into the background behind your tea and how you utilize it in your practice?
I can actually offer you more than that. I can offer you some tea. This is
There you
a teapot, which comes from China. And this is a cup that I constantly sip from, which I have many of. So variety is a big thing. Yeah, this is really interesting because when I was in Asia, one of the things that I found was so incredibly stimulating was this whole idea of the kung fu of tea. In Japan, it's chinoya. It's the art within tea itself. It's the philosophy. And I found that such a phenomenal display of kung fu that I could see how it's a cyclic philosophy that follows a certain path and a methodology. And it's incredibly powerful, something that I aspire to. And it's interesting you say that because I was sitting with a client today having a discussion talking about this, talking about the impact of being able to slow down. Because in Asia, tea consumption, real tea consumption, which is the tea ceremony, is synonymous with meditation. And the highest level of awareness during the tea ceremony is actually engaging in the ceremony by yourself, because it's incredibly introspective. So to be able to focus on the tea, the quality of the tea, the water, the vessel is a reflection of self. So this whole idea of meditation in a cup is something that I tend to really enjoy and I'm enthusiastic about. But here's the interesting thing. Not everybody likes tea. So it's a metaphor. And I use it as a metaphor for my clients to help them understand that by taking a break throughout your day, whatever it is, whatever you relate to, it's a way of being able to still your mind, to create greater awareness. It's the renewal that we learn to embrace as part of a hectic lifestyle, irrespective of COVID, irrespective of political elections. It's really important because there's a direct correlation between human physiology, human cognition, and physical function and performance. So being able to reduce cortisol levels, impact the neurological cycling of healthy hormones in the brain. People have to be able to train themselves to do that, just like training to build a muscle. It happens over time. So this whole idea of something that's qualitatively meditation, it's a cup, but it holds so much significance. Mm-hmm. I can detach from it, but the attachment to it at a time when I'm really enjoying it is a powerful metaphor for how we center and still ourselves.
And whether it's a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a cold glass of water or just sitting outside, whatever that is that allows people to take a break and breathe is what we all need right now. And on that note, we will look forward. Please, everyone bring their own cup of tea or coffee or water or whatever beverage is of your choice to talk with us for a longer full hour on, we're going to cater more to the US audience and I guess, just US audience this time around. Tuesday, October 20th, 9 a.m. Japan Standard Time, which will be 8 p.m. Monday the 19th on the East Coast. And that makes it 5 p.m. out on the West Coast. So we'll be able to reach our American brothers and sisters this time around. And for those of us here in the far, far East, we'll be able to also join in for a great conversation with Paul about how to create more motion from stillness. We'll also dive a little bit deeper into his experience as an expat partner, an accompanying partner being overseas, and the journey that he's had throughout his life and profession, and how he's made the most truly of every set of experiences and locations that he has been in over the course of his wonderful many years on this planet. So, see you all on either the 19th or the 20th. And in that interim, if you can't make it, please RSVP anyway. The recording will be available to all who let us know that they'd like to attend. We'll see you later this month. Paul, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off today?
No, I'd like to say have a phenomenal day. It is nighttime over here, still a lot to do, but I'm going to do it in a space that helps me create stillness. Sending you Domaragato, and enjoy yourself.
Likewise. See you later this month.
I look forward to it too.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Laura.